Everybody thought the wedding was supposed to end the drama. Instead, it may have started a brand new war inside the Braxton family. Because now people are asking one question that refuses to go away. Why does Tamar Braxton seem more upset about Towanda's marriage than Towanda herself? And trust me, the answer being discussed online is a lot messier than anyone expected. Not long after Towanda officially married Sean Hall, social media exploded when clips started circulating of Sean making comments that many fans felt were disrespectful toward his new wife. What should have been a honeymoon phase suddenly turned into a debate about red flags, awkward body language, and family tension. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. According to growing online chatter, Tamar allegedly believes the real story isn't what people see on the surface. She reportedly feels that Towanda has spent years directing her frustration at the wrong people while ignoring behavior that Tamar says has been obvious from the very beginning. And then came the claim that really got people talking. Some viewers became convinced that the tension between Tamar and Towanda was never just about sister rivalry. Instead, they started wondering whether Sean's presence created a much deeper divide behind the scenes, one that nobody wanted to discuss publicly. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear. A lot of what we're discussing today comes from social media reactions, fan theories, public interviews, and online speculation. Many of these claims remain unverified, and only the people involved know the full truth. But that hasn't stopped the internet from connecting dots. Because when old interviews start resurfacing, when family members seem to throw subtle shade, and when wedding drama suddenly becomes public conversation, people naturally start asking questions. And the biggest question of all is this: did Tamar see warning signs years ago that nobody wanted to hear? Or is this simply another chapter in the long-running Braxton family feud that's been brewing for far longer than fans realized? Because once we start unpacking the history between Tamar, Towanda, and Sean, the story becomes a whole lot more complicated than it first appears. Because if you've followed the Braxtons for any length of time, you already know that family disagreements rarely stay private for very long. And that's exactly why so many people became interested when tension between Tamar and Towanda started looking deeper than ordinary sibling drama. At first, most fans brushed it off. After all, brothers and sisters argue. That's normal. But over time, viewers started noticing something different. The awkward moments weren't disappearing. The side comments weren't slowing down. And whenever the family appeared together, there always seemed to be an underlying tension that nobody wanted to fully explain. That's when people began looking back at old interviews, looking back at old reality show episodes, looking back at years of interactions that suddenly seemed to carry a completely different meaning. Because hindsight has a funny way of changing everything. What looked like harmless shade years ago suddenly started looking personal. What looked like simple frustration suddenly looked like resentment. And what looked like ordinary family conflict started feeling like something much bigger. Then Sean Hall entered the conversation. Now, depending on who you ask, Sean is either unfairly criticized by the internet or he's the center of many of the concerns fans have been raising for years. The opinions are completely split. But one thing nobody can deny is that once Sean became a major part of Towanda's life, the online conversations surrounding the family seemed to intensify. People began analyzing every interaction, every interview, every live stream, every joke, every facial expression. And social media did what social media always does. It started building theories. Some of those theories were reasonable. Others were completely wild, but they all revolved around one question. Why did the relationship seem to create so much division? The wedding only added fuel to that discussion, because instead of ending speculation, it created even more of it. Fans expected a celebration, a fresh start, a happy chapter. Instead, people found themselves talking about controversy, talking about family absences, talking about comments that many viewers felt should never have been made publicly. And that's where the internet really locked in. One particular clip spread everywhere. Viewers debated it endlessly. Reaction channels covered it. Comment sections exploded. People weren't even talking about the wedding itself anymore. They were talking about what happened around the wedding. And more importantly, what it might reveal about the relationship. Now, to be fair, Every relationship looks different from the outside. Social media only shows small pieces of people's lives. Nobody watching from home knows the complete story. But public perception matters, especially when you're part of a famous family. And once public perception starts moving in a certain direction, it becomes extremely difficult to stop. That's exactly what appeared to happen here. The more people talked, the more old stories resurfaced. Suddenly, discussions weren't just about Sean. They were about Towanda's past relationships, too. Fans began revisiting everything. Many pointed to her marriage to Andre Carter. Others discussed the financial struggles that were reported over the years. Some remembered conversations about bankruptcy. Others remembered interviews where family members hinted at difficult periods behind the scenes. Piece by piece, an entirely new narrative started forming online. A narrative that suggested Towanda had spent years carrying enormous pressure. Financial pressure, family pressure, relationship pressure, public pressure. And if that narrative is even partially true, it would explain why so many fans sympathize with her today. Because regardless of where people stand in the current drama, most viewers agree on one thing. Towanda has faced her share of challenges. A lot of challenges. In fact, many longtime followers of the family believe she's often been one of the quieter sisters. Not necessarily because she had less to say, but because louder personalities around her naturally grabbed more attention. That's why some people were surprised when the tension with Tamar became impossible to ignore. For years, Tamar has been viewed as the outspoken one, the sister who says exactly what's on her mind whether people like it or not. Supporters call it honesty. Critics call it drama. But either way, Tamar rarely keeps her opinions to herself. And according to online chatter, that's exactly what may have created problems. Because some people believe Tamar has been pointing out concerns for years, while others believe she has a habit of making already difficult situations even harder. Both perspectives exist. Both sides have supporters. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. Nobody agrees on who's right. One side says Tamar is exposing uncomfortable truths. The other side says she's creating unnecessary conflict. Meanwhile, Towanda often finds herself caught directly in the middle. And that brings us to another detail fans can't stop discussing: the issue of loyalty. Because loyalty means different things to different people. Some believe loyalty means defending family no matter what. Others believe loyalty means telling hard truths even when nobody wants to hear them. So, when Tamar allegedly questioned certain things publicly, reactions were immediate. Some viewers applauded her. Others accused her of crossing a line. And the divide only grew larger. Then came another layer, one that had people debating for weeks. The question of whether Towanda was protecting her marriage at all costs.
Think about it.
If someone genuinely believes their relationship is constantly being judged, criticized, and analyzed by strangers online, they're naturally going to become defensive. That's human nature. Nobody wants outsiders telling them how to live their life. Nobody wants their relationship picked apart every day. And that's why some fans argue that Towanda's reactions make complete sense. From that perspective, she's simply standing beside her husband while the internet attacks him. But critics see it differently. They argue that support should never mean ignoring behavior that deserves scrutiny. Again, two completely different interpretations. And both have been gaining traction online. As the debates continued, another interesting pattern emerged. People started revisiting comments made by family members years ago. Not just Tamar. Not just Towanda. Everyone. Old interviews suddenly became evidence. Old clips suddenly became clues. Old disagreements suddenly became part of a larger timeline. Whether those connections are valid or not is another question entirely. But that's how internet investigations work. Once people believe there's a bigger story, every detail starts looking important. Every comment starts sounding suspicious. Every interaction starts feeling meaningful. And before long, speculation takes on a life of its own. That's exactly where things seem to be right now. Because the discussion has expanded far beyond a single wedding, far beyond a single argument, far beyond a single family disagreement. Now people are debating years of history, years of relationships, years of tension, years of public moments. And through all of it, one question continues to linger. What is really happening behind the scenes? The truth is, only the people involved know that answer. The public sees interviews. The public sees social media. The public sees carefully selected moments. But private reality is often very different. Still, perception has power. And right now, perception is driving this entire conversation. The more clips resurface, the more questions people ask. The more questions people ask, the more theories appear. And the more theories appear, the harder it becomes for anyone involved to escape the spotlight. Which brings us to what many fans believe is the most important part of this entire situation. Not the wedding, not the rumors, not even the public comments. The relationship between the sisters themselves. Because marriages can survive controversy. Social media storms eventually fade. Internet debates move on. But family fractures can last for years. And judging by what viewers have been noticing recently, many people are wondering whether this particular fracture has become deeper than ever before. The signs they're pointing to are hard to ignore. The distance, the coldness, the unresolved tension, the feeling that something important remains unsaid. And according to many observers, that's where the real story begins. Because once we start examining the history between Tamar and Towanda more closely, a pattern starts emerging that changes the way people look at everything that happened afterward. Because once people started digging into the history between Tamar and Towanda, they noticed something interesting. The tension didn't appear overnight. It wasn't something that suddenly exploded after the wedding. Instead, many fans believe the cracks had been showing for years. At first, those cracks were easy to dismiss. A sarcastic comment here. An awkward exchange there. A moment of visible irritation during an interview. Nothing that seemed serious on its own. But when dozens of those moments get stacked together, they begin telling a different story. And that's exactly what social media users started doing. They began compiling clips, comparing interviews, rewatching old episodes, looking for signs that today's drama may have started long before anyone realized. What they found only fueled more speculation, because over and over again, viewers noticed a pattern. Whenever discussions about relationships came up, the energy between Tamar and Towanda seemed to shift. Sometimes it was subtle, other times it was impossible to miss. The facial expressions, the pauses, the side-eye glances, the comments that sounded harmless on the surface, but carried a completely different meaning underneath. And once fans noticed those moments, they couldn't unsee them. That's when the conversation surrounding Sean started growing even larger. Because according to online discussions, some people believe Sean became the symbol of a much deeper issue. Not necessarily the cause, but the symbol, the focal point, the person around whom years of unresolved frustration suddenly became visible. Now again, that's a theory, not a fact. But it's one that's gained significant attention, especially because of how often Sean's public behavior ends up becoming a topic of conversation. Take the wedding controversy, for example. Many fans expected newlywed content, romantic moments, celebration, happiness. Instead, they found themselves debating comments that some viewers felt crossed a line. The reactions were immediate. Comment sections filled up. Reaction videos appeared. People began asking why certain jokes needed to be made publicly at all. Some defended Sean. They argued that couples tease each other all the time. That humor is different in every relationship. That outsiders were reading too much into a harmless exchange. Others strongly disagreed. They felt the comments were embarrassing, disrespectful, and completely unnecessary. The divide was sharp, and the debate continues even now. But what made the situation more complicated was the timing, because these conversations were already happening before the wedding. The ceremony simply magnified them. It placed everything under an even brighter spotlight. And under that spotlight, every interaction suddenly mattered. Every comment became evidence. Every live stream became material for analysis. Every interview became another opportunity for fans to connect dots. Some of those dots may have been real. Others may have existed only in people's imaginations. But either way, the internet kept building the story. Then another issue resurfaced. Money. because discussions about finances have followed the Braxton family for years. Not just Towanda, the family as a whole. And whenever money enters the conversation, emotions tend to become even more complicated. According to reports and long-standing public discussions, Towanda faced difficult financial periods in the past. Those struggles became part of her public story. Fans watched her navigate challenges while trying to maintain stability for herself and her children. For many viewers, that created sympathy. They saw someone fighting through difficult circumstances, someone trying to rebuild, someone trying to keep moving forward. But it also created questions. Questions about relationships, questions about support systems, questions about who was helping and who wasn't. That's where Tamar's name frequently enters the discussion. Because despite all the reported tension between them, rumors have circulated for years suggesting that Tamar stepped in to help during certain difficult periods. Those rumors continue generating debate. Some fans view them as evidence that the sisters care about each other more than they admit publicly. Others argue that financial support can sometimes create its own resentment and complications, especially within families. And family dynamics are rarely simple. Money can strengthen relationships. Money can damage relationships. Sometimes it does both at the same time. That complexity is one reason people remain so fascinated by the Braxtons. Nothing ever feels straightforward. Every issue seems connected to another issue. Every disagreement seems connected to years of history. And every public moment seems to carry layers of context that outsiders can only partially understand. Then came another development that kept appearing in online conversations. The belief that Towanda was increasingly isolating herself from certain family members. Now, whether that's true or not is impossible for outsiders to know. But the perception exists. And perception often becomes its own reality, particularly on social media. When fans notice absences, when family members stop appearing together, when interactions become less frequent, people start asking questions. And once questions start, theories quickly follow. Some viewers became convinced that Towanda was choosing her marriage over family relationships. Others argued she was simply establishing healthy boundaries. Again, two completely different interpretations, both passionately defended by different groups online. The truth may lie somewhere in the middle, or somewhere completely different. But the speculation continued. Then things became even more interesting when older comments involving Sean resurfaced. Comments that many people had forgotten. Comments that suddenly sounded different when viewed through the lens of today's drama. That's one of the strange things about public life. Nothing ever truly disappears. A clip from years ago can suddenly become relevant again. An interview from the past can suddenly take on new meaning. And when that happens, public opinion can shift rapidly. That's exactly what seemed to occur here. Fans began revisiting old footage with fresh eyes. And once they did, they started noticing details they previously overlooked. Whether those details actually prove anything is another matter entirely. But they certainly fueled discussion. The conversation eventually expanded beyond just Tamar, Towanda, and Sean. People began examining the entire Braxton family dynamic. The pressures of fame, the pressures of reality television, the pressures of maintaining family relationships while living in the public eye. Because imagine trying to resolve personal disagreements while millions of people are watching. Imagine every argument becoming content, every misunderstanding becoming a headline, every emotional reaction becoming a viral clip. That's a level of pressure most people never experience. And many fans believe that pressure has played a significant role in what we're seeing today. Over time, unresolved issues can grow. Misunderstandings can multiply. Resentments can deepen, especially when those issues are constantly being discussed by strangers online. Some longtime viewers believe that's exactly what happened here. They argue that years of public scrutiny slowly transformed ordinary family problems into something much larger, something much harder to repair, something much harder to escape. Meanwhile, Tamar's supporters insist she has simply reached a point where she refuses to stay silent. They believe she's tired of protecting narratives she doesn't agree with, tired of pretending everything is fine when she believes it isn't. Towanda's supporters see things differently. They argue she's doing what any spouse would do, protecting her marriage, protecting her peace, protecting her personal decisions from constant outside judgment. And that's why the debate remains so intense. Because both perspectives resonate with different audiences. Neither side appears willing to back down. And every new development only strengthens existing opinions. But perhaps the most fascinating part of all this isn't who's right. It's the fact that fans remain so emotionally invested. Because underneath all the rumors, speculation, and social media commentary lies something very human. Family. The complicated reality of family relationships. The difficulty of balancing loyalty with honesty. The challenge of supporting loved ones while disagreeing with their choices. Those are universal struggles. Most people can relate to them in some way, which may explain why this story continues generating so much attention. Because even though the names are famous, the emotions feel familiar. The disagreements feel familiar. The frustrations feel familiar. And according to many observers, that's exactly why the situation continues resonating with audiences. But if viewers think the story ends there, they're mistaken. Because the most explosive theories surrounding Tamar, Towanda, and Sean don't focus on what happened publicly. They focus on what some people believe has been happening behind closed doors for years. And those theories have only intensified as more old clips, interviews, and comments continue resurfacing online. And that's where the story takes its most controversial turn. Because according to some of the theories circulating online, the real issue was never a single argument, a single wedding, or even a single relationship. The theory many fans keep discussing is that years of unresolved feelings eventually reached a breaking point. Again, that's speculation, not fact. But it helps explain why so many people continue analyzing every interaction involving Tamar, Towanda, and Sean. Because from the outside looking in, the tension feels bigger than whatever the public has actually been told. And that feeling has become impossible for many viewers to ignore. As more clips resurfaced online, people started paying closer attention to Sean's public behavior. Not just one clip, not just one interview, but a pattern. Or at least what some fans believe is a pattern. Every time another live stream appeared, every time another joke surfaced, every time another family discussion happened, comment sections immediately filled with opinions. Some viewers insisted Sean was simply comfortable being himself. Others argued that his behavior often put Towanda in awkward situations. The divide remained as strong as ever. What's interesting is that many of these discussions stopped being about Sean alone. Instead, they became conversations about why Towanda appeared willing to overlook things that outsiders found concerning. That question started showing up everywhere. Under interviews, under reaction videos, across social media platforms. And the answers varied wildly. Some believed she was deeply committed to making the marriage work. Others felt she was tired of hearing criticism from family and fans. And some suggested she simply saw a completely different side of Sean than the public ever gets to see. Which, to be fair, is entirely possible. The public only sees selected moments. Relationships happen behind closed doors. No live stream can fully explain a marriage. No viral clip can tell the complete story. Still, perception matters. And public perception has clearly become part of the situation. Then fans started revisiting another uncomfortable question. Why did the tension between Tamar and Towanda appear to become even more noticeable after the wedding? For many observers, that became the biggest mystery. Normally, major milestones bring families together. At least temporarily. But according to online chatter, the opposite seemed to happen here. People noticed distance. They noticed coldness. They noticed that the divide appeared wider than before. And naturally, they began creating theories to explain it. One theory suggests Tamar believes she spent years warning people about issues that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Another theory suggests Towanda became frustrated with constant criticism and finally chose her own path, regardless of what anyone thought. Neither explanation has been confirmed, but both continue circulating heavily online. And that's what keeps the story alive. Not proof, not receipts, not dramatic revelations. Questions. Unanswered questions. The internet thrives on unanswered questions. The moment something feels unresolved, people keep digging. They keep analyzing. They keep searching for hidden meaning. And that's exactly what's happening now. Every family appearance becomes news. Every interview becomes evidence. Every social media post becomes a clue. Fans have essentially turned into detectives. Some are convinced they're uncovering a larger story. Others think people are reading far too much into ordinary family disagreements. The truth probably depends on who you ask. But here's something many viewers agree on. The Braxton family has been under enormous pressure for a very long time. Fame creates pressure. Reality television creates pressure. Public expectations create pressure. And family disagreements become much harder to manage when millions of people are watching. Imagine trying to resolve a private conflict while strangers debate it online every day. Imagine trying to heal a relationship while every interaction becomes a headline. That's a difficult position for anyone. And many fans believe those pressures have gradually taken their toll. Looking back, some viewers think the warning signs were visible years ago. Not necessarily because anyone was hiding a massive secret, but because unresolved issues tend to reveal themselves eventually. Sometimes through arguments, sometimes through distance, sometimes through small moments that seem insignificant at the time, until years later. Then suddenly those moments look different. That's exactly what's happening now. Old interviews are being re-examined. Old reality show scenes are being revisited. Old comments are being interpreted through an entirely new lens. Whether those interpretations are fair is another question, but they're certainly happening. Meanwhile, supporters on both sides continue defending their favorites. Tamar supporters argue she's finally being understood. They believe people dismissed her concerns for years and are only now recognizing what she was trying to say. Towanda's supporters strongly disagree. They believe she's been unfairly scrutinized and judged simply for standing by her marriage. And then there are fans who refuse to take sides at all. Those viewers simply hope the family finds a way to heal. Because underneath all the drama, all the speculation, and all the headlines, there's still a family at the center of the story. A real family, with real relationships, real emotions, and real consequences. That's something social media often forgets. It's easy to turn people into characters. It's easy to treat every disagreement like entertainment. But the people involved still have to live with the fallout long after the comments stop trending. And speaking of social media, many observers believe that's become one of the biggest factors driving this entire situation. Years ago, family disagreements stayed within families. Today, everything becomes public. Everything becomes content. Everything becomes a discussion. That changes how conflicts evolve. It changes how people respond. And it often makes reconciliation much harder. Because once millions of people choose sides, every conversation becomes more complicated. Every apology becomes more complicated. Every attempt at healing becomes more complicated. Some fans believe that's exactly where the Braxtons find themselves today, caught between private reality and public perception, trying to navigate personal issues while the internet watches every move. And unfortunately, the internet rarely loses interest in stories like this, especially when new clips continue resurfacing, especially when old tensions continue appearing, especially when nobody involved seems completely ready to address everything directly. Which brings us to the question many fans keep asking. Can the relationship between Tamar and Towanda actually be repaired? The honest answer is simple. Nobody knows. Families have recovered from worse. Families have also fallen apart over much less. The future depends entirely on the people involved. Not the blogs. Not social media. Not the comment sections. The sisters themselves. Because at some point, every family has to decide whether old wounds are worth carrying forever. And that's the decision many fans believe is waiting somewhere ahead. Until then, the speculation will continue. The theories will continue. The debates will continue. And every new interview, live stream, or public appearance will probably generate another round of discussion. But no matter where you stand on this situation, one thing is clear. This story has become about far more than a wedding. Far more than Sean. Far more than one argument between sisters. For many people watching, it's become a story about loyalty, about family, about trust, about relationships, and about what happens when years of unresolved tension finally start surfacing in public. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Tamar has been calling out problems that others ignored? Or do you think Towanda deserves the freedom to handle her marriage without constant criticism from family and fans? And most importantly, do you believe this family feud can still be repaired, or has too much happened for things to ever go back to the way they were? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is far from over.